Let's be honest.
The Dog Loves Bluey, now streaming on Disney+.
All right, ready? You ready for this?
Yes.
Okay. A dream is a wish your heart makes.
Oh, that's easy.
Rachel Zegler never wanted to appear ungrateful for the opportunities that had come her way. Time and again, she's tried to remind people that she knows how lucky she is to be where she is, to be part of projects that so many aspiring actors only dream of. But as she's admitted, gratitude doesn't erase pain. "I can be having the greatest time," she once said, "and still wish people would stop sending me death threats." It was a confession that felt both vulnerable and raw, the kind of honesty that comes only when someone's been pushed past their breaking point. In recent months, Rachel had been trying to drown out the noise, the endless cycle of criticism, memes, and think pieces that seemed to follow every interview she gave and every clip from her upcoming Snow White remake that surfaced online. So, when she posted what she thought would be a heartfelt message to her followers, she hoped to finally put the controversy to rest. But instead of quelling the fire, her words only poured gasoline on the flames. The video, filmed from what looked like her bedroom, was intimate in setting but explosive in impact. The lighting was soft, almost melancholy, and she stared straight into the camera with an expression that flickered between frustration, exhaustion, and quiet defiance. Speaking slowly but with conviction, she explained that despite all the hate she's faced, people still show up for her work. They still buy tickets. They still care. Her voice trembled slightly, her eyes welling as she spoke. But just beneath that surface of vulnerability, there was an unmistakable edge of irritation. "When I win," she said, invoking the famous statue of Winged Victory, "the Winged Victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. I can only hope that despite my flaws, despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many, people will still line up to see me." It was poetic and emotional, the kind of statement that might have resonated in another time. But the internet, ruthless as ever, seized on it instantly. Within minutes, clips of the video were everywhere. On TikTok, creators stitched it with parody reactions and sarcastic reenactments. Some played the clip dramatically with fake tears. Others mocked it outright. "Excuse me," one viral skit began. "Your curtain, please allow me to help." "Help from you?" the mock actress replied. "I didn't mean to offend," the first responded. "I just thought you should know." "That I should know what?" "That some privileged white guy thinks his opinion matters? Get over your entitlement. I'm not a damsel in distress waiting for you to ride in on your high horse." The parody hit millions of views, turning what Rachel had meant as a heartfelt defense into the internet's latest punchline. Over on X, formerly Twitter, things got even worse. What Rachel had hoped would serve as her redemption arc quickly transformed into a feeding frenzy. Commenters picked apart every word, every pause, every expression. Instead of sympathy, she found herself at the center of a digital storm that only seemed to grow stronger by the hour. Tweets mocked her tone as Hollywood humble, her message as self-centered, and her attempted artistry as performance-level cringe. Even the film's numbers became part of the spectacle. Snow White budget, $250 million. Box office, 43 million, one user wrote. "Oh, but it's only been 2 days. Give it a chance." Another replied, "Why should we? Every major flop feels intentional at this point. These studios are either sabotaging themselves or completely out of touch." Some even speculated about hidden agendas or industry trends, joking that Disney had a secret plan to tank its own classics. The harshest critics didn't hold back. "Who's surprised?" one viral post read. "You cast arguably the least genuine, most out-of-touch person in Hollywood and somehow made the villains the only relatable characters." The hashtags told their own story. "Nar snowflop, fair stoff none, nar Disney disaster." What was meant to be a deeply personal reflection had instead been received as tone-deaf, privileged, and painfully disconnected from how audiences felt about the movie. And for some corners of the internet, this was exactly the moment they'd been waiting for. YouTubers, film critics, and cultural commentators raced to upload their takes. One popular reviewer opened with, "All right, guys, I watched Snow White so you don't have to. Let's talk about it." He explained that in the new film, Snow White doesn't get her name from her fair skin. Because obviously that wouldn't work with Rachel Zegler, but rather from surviving a snowstorm. The reimagined kingdom, he said, was portrayed as a kind of utopian commune where everyone shares equally, reflecting an updated idea of fairness. He chuckled as he described it. Her parents are basically running a medieval socialist paradise. That's where the phrase, fairest of them all comes from equality. It's almost like a political metaphor now. Viewers either laughed in disbelief or praised the change as modern and progressive. Some called it bold, others called it nonsense. But whether people mocked it or defended it, one thing was clear. Rachel Zegler's attempt to reclaim control of her story had completely backfired. What began as a moment of emotional honesty became yet another meme in the endless cycle of internet outrage. Instead of silencing her critics, she had given them their loudest talking point yet. And in the brutal world of social media, where narratives change in seconds and empathy is often in short supply, that's all it took for the fire to burn hotter than ever. Screenshots of review bombs, meme threads mocking her statements about not needing a prince, and out-of-context clips from past interviews began circulating across every corner of social media like wildfire. They weren't new, but their timing was perfect. Or catastrophic, depending on which side you were on. Every few hours, a new compilation or meme thread appeared, each one recycling old footage, dissecting her tone, her facial expressions, even her body language. It was like watching an endless cycle of déjà vu. The same clips, the same headlines, the same outrage, only louder each time. In one of the most viral resurfaced clips, Rachel laughed casually during a press junket, discussing Disney's original Snow White from 1937. "The original cartoon came out in 1937, she said with a grin. And very evidently so. The audience chuckled. Then came the line that would haunt her. There's a big focus on her love story, with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah, weird. The room laughed, but online, the laughter turned venomous. What had once sounded playful now seemed disrespectful. Many accused her of mocking a cornerstone of Disney history, the film that started it all. The clip was stitched, edited, remixed, and memed until it became a digital symbol of everything wrong with modern Hollywood. Other snippets soon followed. In one, she declared with confidence, "I will elbow everyone out of the way to play this part." It was a harmless, tongue-in-cheek comment about ambition. But stripped of context, it was interpreted as arrogance. Another clip showed her speaking about her co-star Andrew Burnap. A lot of people will assume it's a love story just because we cast a guy in the movie, Andrew Byrne. But all of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby. That single sentence, "could get cut," became the internet's new catchphrase. It was quoted, mocked, and slapped onto memes about failed projects, celebrity egos, and Hollywood rewrites. Then came the soundbite that truly set the internet ablaze. Her statement about fair pay. "If I'm going to stand there 18 hours a day in a dress as an iconic Disney princess," she said, "I deserve to be paid for every hour that it's streamed online." Some saw it as empowerment. A young woman demanding fair treatment in an industry that has long undervalued its stars. But others took it as entitlement, a tone-deaf remark from someone who, in their view, already had everything. The nuance vanished in seconds, context lost beneath a tidal wave of outrage, and finally, the line that defined her Snow White press tour. "We absolutely wrote a Snow White that is not going to be saved by the prince," she declared proudly in another interview. "She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be." It was meant to be a rallying cry, a bold feminist twist on a classic fairy tale. But instead, it became fuel for critics who saw it as proof that Disney was rewriting nostalgia into something unrecognizable. For every person who applauded the new direction, there were 10 more calling it an insult to the original. What was meant to be a fairy tale comeback quickly transformed into a digital witch trial. And in the eyes of the public, the villain wasn't the evil queen, it was Rachel Zegler herself. The internet had rewritten the story. Where once she had been the innocent heroine chosen to bring a beloved tale back to life, she was now painted as the arrogant newcomer who didn't understand the value of what she'd inherited. Clips of her laughing about the 1937 original, calling it weird and creepy, resurfaced daily. Her casual comments about the prince literally stalking Snow White became an anthem for outrage. Words that once sounded modern and witty now came across as dismissive and smug. Those interviews, once meant to promote empowerment, had aged like milk left out in the sun. But the real sting came when the backlash began showing up where it mattered most: the box office. Snow White opened to a stunningly weak $45 million domestically, a number that sent shockwaves through the industry. For a Disney live-action remake, especially one carrying the legacy of the studio's first animated feature, it was an alarming figure. Analysts tried to rationalize it. Maybe audiences were fatigued by remakes. Maybe it was the marketing. Maybe it was just bad timing. But the comparisons were brutal. The Little Mermaid, despite its own controversy storm, had opened at nearly $95 million just the year before. Beauty and the Beast had crossed $170 million. Aladdin had soared past $115 million. Snow White, by contrast, was sinking fast. Industry insiders called it Disney's biggest miscalculation in years. Others were less diplomatic. They called it a flat-out disaster. Audiences didn't just skip this movie, one trade journalist wrote. They rejected it. The data backed that up. Major theater chains began quietly removing Snow White from their largest screens within 10 days. Big weekend showings were replaced by other films. In some locations, the movie vanished from listings altogether. It was the kind of box office collapse that Disney wasn't used to seeing, and it rattled even the most optimistic executives. For Rachel Zegler, the impact was deeply personal. The dream role she had once described as a childhood fantasy had turned into a public nightmare. Her social media pages were flooded with memes, edited clips, and vitriol. Every post, every red carpet photo, every public appearance was dissected and mocked. Even Disney's massive marketing machine, with its glittering trailers, posters, and interview circuits, couldn't change the narrative. The public had already made up its mind, and the internet's verdict was brutal. Then came the Oscars. The lights dimmed, the orchestra played, and the announcer's voice echoed across the Dolby Theater. Please welcome Rachel Zegler, and the crowd applauded politely, but online, the reaction was instant and merciless. Live chats filled with comments mocking her entrance. Twitter trended with snarky jokes before she even reached the microphone. What should have been a triumphant moment, a chance at professional redemption, instead became a reminder of how far her image had fallen. By then, the story had transcended Snow White itself. It wasn't just about one movie or one actress anymore. It was about the widening rift between audiences and the modern entertainment industry, between nostalgia and reinvention, sincerity and social messaging, celebrity and public perception. Rachel had tried to play a different kind of princess, one who didn't need saving. But in doing so, she found herself trapped in a very different kind of story. A cautionary tale about fame, social media, and how quickly the court of public opinion can crown a new villain. Visual effects have always pushed the boundaries of what we see on screen. They turn imagination into reality, giving weight to the impossible and making fantasy feel tangible. Their work is the invisible heartbeat of modern cinema, the force that transforms green screens into galaxies and digital models into living, breathing worlds. The Oscars stage shimmered with that same sense of wonder as the announcer's voice echoed through the hall. Here are the nominees for Best Visual Effects. It should have been a celebratory night, a triumphant moment for Rachel Zegler, one that symbolized resilience, recovery, and renewal after months of controversy. Dressed in an elegant gown that shimmered under the spotlights, she walked the red carpet alongside her Snow White co-star, Gal Gadot. Cameras flashed. Fans cheered. On the surface, everything seemed polished and perfect. But beneath the glamour, tension simmered. Observers didn't have to look closely to sense it. The distance between the two women was visible, almost physical. Gal Gadot, usually warm and expressive, appeared reserved, her body language noticeably stiff. In videos, she stood slightly apart from Rachel, smiling politely for the cameras but rarely engaging. There was no laughter between them, no shared glances, no hint of chemistry. For two women cast as counterparts in a fairy tale, one the heroine, the other the queen, the irony wasn't lost on anyone watching. Within minutes, social media lit up. Fans posted side-by-side clips pointing out the subtle avoidance, the awkward poses, the forced smiles. You can feel the tension? One body language expert tweeted. Gossip blogs ran headlines within hours. Gal Gadot distances herself from Rachel Zegler amid Snow White backlash. Behind the scenes, Disney's PR team reportedly scrambled to control the narrative. But the damage was already done.
And the song is at the very end of the song where she says, I can always dream, but then I wake up and it's me again. I think it's so heartbreaking, but also such a universal feeling for so many young.
Insiders later confirmed what many had suspected. The relationship between the two stars had deteriorated. While Gadot fulfilled her contractual obligations to promote the film, she quietly stepped back from its orbit afterward, declining additional press and avoiding discussions about Snow White altogether. What made it worse for Rachel was that Gal's career remained entirely unscathed. She continued to book major roles, land fashion deals, and appear at events, her public image intact. Rachel, meanwhile, was experiencing the opposite. She found herself increasingly isolated, surrounded by a few loyal supporters online, but overwhelmed by waves of criticism that refused to fade. What was meant to be a carefully planned appearance, a chance to rebuild her image and remind audiences why she had been cast as one of Disney's youngest leading ladies, instead became a painful reminder of how much goodwill she had lost. Her Oscars night appearance, far from being a comeback moment, cemented her as the face of Snow White's failure. The glimmering lights and applause couldn't hide the undercurrent of skepticism. Every photo was dissected. Every clip was re-edited into TikToks and memes. Once hailed as a rising star after West Side Story, Rachel Zegler was now seen as Hollywood's cautionary tale, a performer who had gone from being adored to being relentlessly mocked in less than 2 years. Her effort to modernize Snow White, once promoted as bold and empowering, was now being described as tone-deaf and dismissive. What had once read as confidence now came across as arrogance. Her attempts to control the narrative, to speak her truth and stand her ground, had backfired spectacularly. What was meant to be her breakout, career-defining role had instead fractured her public image. And, in many ways, her trajectory in Hollywood. Rachel Zegler's viral meltdown may have been the spark, but the fuel had been building long before. As soon as the box office numbers began to collapse, the internet went into full archival mode. Old interviews resurfaced like ghosts. Screenshots of past statements, sarcastic quotes, and casual remarks were reposted, reframed, and weaponized. Every soundbite became a headline. Every smirk became a meme. Front and center in this digital autopsy was her infamous commentary on the original Snow White. In clip after clip, Rachel could be seen rolling her eyes, dismissing the 1937 film as weird and outdated. She mocked the romantic plotline. "A guy who literally stalks her," she said with a laugh, and declared proudly that her version of Snow White wouldn't be saved by a prince or dreaming about true love. Instead, she explained, this Snow White would be dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. But what had been intended as a modern, feminist retelling was not received that way. To many, her tone seemed dismissive, not of outdated gender roles, but of the very story that had shaped generations of moviegoers. Instead of being celebrated as a trailblazer, she was mocked as someone who missed the point of the fairy tale entirely. And the backlash didn't come only from trolls or fringe voices. It came from the core of Disney's audience, the people who buy the merchandise, book the park vacations, and show up on opening weekends. These were the parents and grandparents who had grown up with the original film, who had shared it with their children, and who felt personally insulted by her remarks. TikToks began appearing of elderly fans explaining how much the 1937 classic had meant to them as children, and how they refused to watch a remake that seemed to mock it. Even neutral viewers started to pile on, criticizing not only Rachel's interviews but her demeanor throughout the press tour. Clips of her joking, sighing, or appearing disinterested in interviews were reposted as examples of Hollywood arrogance. The narrative had solidified, not through one scandal, but through accumulation. Every attempt she made to clarify her statements only seemed to deepen the wound. For Rachel, the night that was supposed to mark a turning point, a graceful return to the spotlight, had instead become a mirror reflecting everything that had gone wrong. What had started as an ambitious modern take on a beloved fairy tale had become a cultural controversy, a career-defining lesson in how fast admiration can turn to animosity in the age of social media. Her story wasn't just about Snow White anymore. It had become a symbol of something bigger. The tension between old and new Hollywood, between sincerity and spectacle, between speaking out and staying silent. And as Rachel stood beneath the blinding lights of the Oscars stage, her smile frozen for the cameras, it was clear that the fairy tale magic Disney had promised had vanished, replaced by something far colder, far more human, the weight of public perception, and the unforgiving memory of the internet. Words like smug, entitled, and out of touch flooded every comment section, not trickling in gradually, but crashing down like a tidal wave. Each new post, each reaction video, each thread added another layer to the storm surrounding Rachel Zegler's name. What had started as minor online grumbling had become an organized movement of mockery. Commentators dissected every sentence she had ever said in an interview, analyzing her tone as if it were a clue in some psychological thriller. Micro-expressions became memes. Pauses became punchlines. Even the way she laughed or looked off camera was slowed down, captioned, and reinterpreted as proof of arrogance or disdain. And once the internet decided on a narrative, it was ruthless in keeping it alive. Entire YouTube channels began uploading compilations titled things like The Downfall of Rachel Zegler or How Disney's Golden Girl Lost Everything. TikTok creators dramatized her interviews, playing both parts, Rachel as the condescending actress and the interviewer as the innocent victim. On Reddit, threads hundreds of comments deep debated whether her downfall was deserved or a symptom of Hollywood ego. Every social media platform became a courtroom, and Rachel was on trial before millions of spectators with no defense team in sight. Unlike other celebrities who could count on a safety net of peers to offer support, Rachel found herself in an eerily empty space. There were no public tweets of encouragement from her Snow White co-stars, no kind words from industry veterans, no one stepping in to say, "She's young, give her a break." The silence was deafening, and it grew louder by the day. Even people who had once praised her talent were now curiously quiet. Directors who had previously spoken glowingly of her ability gave careful, neutral responses when asked about her. Fellow actresses avoided mentioning her name entirely. It wasn't just silence, it was distance. Silence, it was distance. And in Hollywood, distance is a language all its own. It's the industry's quietest way of saying, you're on your own. Behind closed doors, the effects of that silence were even more brutal. Studio insiders began whispering that Rachel's upcoming projects were being reconsidered. That word, reconsidered, is one of the most dangerous in show business. It doesn't mean canceled, but it doesn't mean secure either. It means uncertainty, and in an industry built on image, uncertainty kills careers faster than scandal. One trade publication reported that Rachel had been attached to 2 high-profile projects. One a prestige drama, the other a fantasy blockbuster. But both were suddenly on hold pending further discussion. Executives, publicists, and marketing analysts began running quiet calculations. Could Rachel's name still sell tickets? Could her face still be used to promote a major brand without inviting backlash? Would audiences pay to see her, or had she already become a symbol of Hollywood gone wrong? These weren't just questions about one actress. They were about trust and about perception. And in Hollywood, perception is everything. Rachel's rise had once been meteoric, almost fairy tale-like. A teenager plucked from obscurity through an open casting call, chosen by Steven Spielberg himself to lead his West Side Story remake. She had gone from singing covers in her bedroom to walking the Oscars red carpet in less than 2 years. Critics called her the voice of a generation. Spielberg praised her once-in-a-lifetime presence. She won a Golden Globe, landed magazine covers, and was hailed as the new face of a more diverse, progressive Hollywood. Everything about her trajectory seemed unstoppable, until it wasn't, because the same internet that had crowned her a star now decided she didn't deserve the crown. Her confidence, once praised as refreshing, was suddenly labeled arrogance. Her humor was called sarcasm. Her passion was rebranded as self-importance. The tide had turned completely, and there was no PR strategy powerful enough to stop it. Soon, even journalists began to treat her differently. Reporters who had once written glowing profiles now penned headlines like "From Rising Star to Hollywood's Problem Child" and "Rachel Zegler and the Cost of Defiance." The tone shifted from admiration to analysis, as if everyone wanted to dissect the anatomy of her fall. Her team scrambled to regain control. Publicists arranged calls with magazine editors, pitching redemption stories about Rachel's growth, humility, and the lessons she'd learned. Managers reached out to late-night talk shows, hoping she could appear as her charming, self-aware self, smiling, laughing, reminding people why they liked her in the first place. But producers hesitated. Booking Rachel meant controversy, and controversy meant risk. Even brands that had once lined up to work with her started quietly stepping back. Her social media presence became a battlefield. Every post, no matter how innocent, was flooded with sarcasm and insults. If she smiled, they called it fake. If she went silent, they called it guilt. If she defended herself, they said she was playing the victim. Every move she made became the wrong one. And the tragedy of it all was how fast it happened. Only a few months earlier, she had been celebrated as Hollywood's future. The girl who could sing, act, and represent a new era of Disney heroines. Now, she was being discussed as a cautionary tale in marketing meetings. Because in the modern entertainment landscape, downfall isn't always about scandal. It's about timing, tone, and public emotion. Rachel's mistake wasn't just what she said. It was when she said it, how she said it, and how unwilling she was to let it go. Her refusal to bend or apologize became part of her brand, and in an age where audiences crave humility, that defiance looked like hubris. To some, she became the face of everything. Wrong with Hollywood's modern reboots, stars who lecture fans about how the old ways are outdated while failing to understand what made those classics beloved in the first place. To others, she embodied the worst stereotypes of the Hollywood elite, detached, self-righteous, and convinced of their moral superiority. People weren't just rejecting Snow White, they were rejecting her. And when audiences stop rooting for the person behind the character, the movie doesn't just fail, it collapses. Inside her team's offices, the mood reportedly shifted from panic to resignation. They knew that viral clips and internet narratives are nearly impossible to erase. Once the public brands someone unlikable, that label sticks like glue. Every headline becomes a reminder. Every future project becomes a gamble. There's still a chance for Rachel to recover. Hollywood loves a comeback story, but it requires something she hasn't yet shown. Humility. Genuine, vulnerable humility. The kind that disarms critics instead of feeding them. The kind that turns mockery into empathy. Without that, her future in the industry may stay frozen in this moment. The moment where a rising star, blinded by the spotlight, mistook confidence for invincibility. Rachel Zegler's fall wasn't sudden. It was gradual, silent, and self-inflicted. A slow unraveling that everyone could see coming except her. And in the end, the tragedy wasn't that she failed. It was that she forgot the most important lesson in Hollywood. The same people who build you up are the ones who decide when it's time to watch you fall. When it's time to watch you fall.